do jang de jambo de sanje mi de bo ye zhou na che ba shuo yi dang gu zhu ren 야다 다 지유推了大了嘎巴提是吧지유推了大了嘎巴尼提在叫我原本是现在叫我原嘛提在现在没见那那是叫我原把就如是哦如果让你原比推天让对些让你原比推在叫我原把嘛一行就没够些让你解释先让你没被测叫我要把让你没被测的叫我要把没有的叫我们要把要没的啊你就没有测的这在叫我原本是现在叫我要买是这不着是吧但提测啊提测啊没这现在测啊没这那是当然一个测啊没这让你也被推那样没这让你没被测啊叫我没要按你叫我要把没那提测啊没这现在测啊没这那是提测现在没这那对那些叫我有叫我那些对那些叫我要我就是这个对没事不吃了是呀
So next comes the third topic here, verse 353, which is a rejection of the view of the opponent here through examining the point of things arising or being produced, the time of production. This is in verse 353, where it says, there is no production at that time, nor is there production at any other. If not produced at that time nor another, when will there ever be production? At a time when the sprout itself exists, there is no production, since it does not need to be produced. Other than that, when it does not exist, there is no production, since it cannot be produced. If it is not produced at that time nor at the other, when will there ever be production? There cannot be a time of production. So then fourth comes a rejection of this of causality in this way through the rising of things by examining whether things are in their own she has entity here or state but actually own state or another state in the outline here. So this is in verse 354 and the opponent might say she has milk turning into something which is curd constitutes production. I would say maybe milk occurring in the state of curd constitutes production. Milk occurring in the state of becoming yogurt, being yogurt, constitutes production. Answer, that is incorrect. Just as there is no production of that as the thing it is, this term she's translating as the thing it is could be also understood in the state, in one state. Neither is it produced as something else. Since something which exists as milk does not need to become milk, there is no production. Neither is that milk produced as something else, i.e. yogurt in American English, occurred in English. For the two are different, have different characters is the way I translate that.
Oh yeah. 다 토다 발송을 따라가봐니 토마바다 타마다 기능으로 쓰마이 인이탄에 매바로 시다를 좀 봐주루 윤전 대장 라시 교와 매대 안에서 토마를 교와다 파도네 와다 타마 주반남 기능으로 쓰바 말레스 기능으로 쓰바 민데 마게 바라 지네 주반 미스비실 토마 파다 타마다 기능으로 쓴바 많이 있어. 마게 바제네 주바 메시비치. 제네 주바 메시비치. 지디 기위 튀나 기와. 내위 튀나 내와. 지비 튀나 지바 림제동 오니 주에도 세나 제지 내숨도 아니 림제도 추바 나신 아니 라시 주여 세나 오니 주여 세나. 내가 가서를 리트나 현인이 다니시 지위트나 내와당 지바당 내유트나 제 아니 지와당 지바 사서와 리트나 현이 다니 매바로 지다를 좀바람 그루 저 매바 내와당 지바 미세 바타르 현이라야 자와 차오但是这个那是嫌疑的呀，叫我瞧我。曾经的人们那样对前没得比起来，再看见基本的人间都上学局呢，俺他就是他当个是吧？没那样对前没得比起来，
Next comes a rejection of this idea by examining the three periods, the beginning, middle, and end of a thing's production or arising. And that's given in verse 355. There's no intrinsic production for the following reason as well. The first, intermediate, and last are not possible prior to production. And then the commentary says, first production, then duration, and lastly disintegration are not possible prior to production, because that which is unproduced cannot have production, duration, and disintegration. And then the opponent comes back and says, asserts production while a thing is being produced, duration while it lasts, and disintegration when it disintegrates exist consecutively by means of their own intrinsic character, or here it's intrinsic nature. Then the reply to that is, how can each begin without the other two? How could each at its particular time begin without the other two? Duration and production, duration and disintegration are impossible without production. The same applies to the other two, meaning that duration isn't possible without origination or arising of the thing, production, as well as disintegration. And disintegration is impossible without the arising and duration of the thing. And just so all three have the same interdependent nature. And moreover, she has a product or created thing is not feasible in the absence of any one of these characteristics. When anything that's a created thing or a product, to use her terminology, is they have to have all three of these characteristics: arising, duration, and disintegration.
Oh yeah. That's what I said. You let all company send you over me by the top of that going over to me. Teaching at that sending you let you on your minds. Oh, Nile, I need to share and see you job very days. The generation you cannot Chomola saw a guitar, 자기 잡음 소지 처음으로 소와 현중 오 매봐 잡음 다경 오 중앙 매대 안 잡음 중앙에 처음으로 되게 처음이야 랑경 오에 맞을 때 양시 생만을 되게 되주 인상 유전显了让马来哇咱们这是个的什么生的对起现在第一前呢刚说的澎湃的拿当县当他现在呢一个来中啊要把马云的拿当县我你去住叫我让去住没多拿当让去大县你我叫我你去住你叫我让去住没吧要买的哦。
Next comes examination of the arising of things or production of things from examining both whether they're themselves or they are others than themselves, both of those alternatives, and that's given in verse 356. There's no intrinsic production for the following reason also. Wait, did I miss 356? Sorry. For this reason, too, created things, or this verse 356. For this reason, also, created things or products cannot be intrinsically produced. The thing itself does not occur without other things, and thus there is no coming into existence either from self or from other. The thing itself, such as a clay pot, does not occur without other things such as clay, since it is contingent upon clay. The clay does not exist by means of its own character either, since it depends on pebbles. Thus, the pot does not come into existence either from self or from other, since neither self nor other exist by means of their own intrinsic character, there is no intrinsic production. So this is, in this way, it's rejecting the idea that something arises from itself, from something which is intrinsically other than itself, from both or from neither, actually can also be extracted from this.
Oh yeah. 那提前了，让自己就直接搞把台了。我他不我的，我拿起的几家店，要把你的名流吧，这些街上碰板了，几家中啊要把买意思。现在让自己叫我让自己要买的是，叫我让自己买的，叫我是碰病我让自己呢，叫我是碰病我当现在几家的有东西就把名流我提起来是啊，几家的有呢让自己有呢。安尼有过了，他买一本上，叫我是碰病我当其他几家的有绝对名流我提起来。让自己呢，安尼我拿其他几家都还有过哦，人家绝对没有我提醒，碰壁叫我的碰把几家，几家都碰壁叫我的碰把几家，我就中我要把马云的，这单呢，安尼点把去年把叫我了，我都7月份，把点把去年把叫我了，我都7月份样，安尼碰把有个安尼叫我太去了。
Next comes an examination of this from the perspective of whether this is sequential or simultaneous, whether production is sequential or simultaneous. It's got two parts. The first is the actual rejection or refutation of this, and then later will come the second part. So this is in verse 357. It cannot be said to exist before, after, or simultaneously. Therefore, production does not occur simultaneously with the pot. Moreover, there is no intrinsic production, since it is impossible to say that production and so forth exists before, after, or simultaneously with the pot. Therefore, the pot's production does not intrinsically occur simultaneously with the pot. I'm using intrinsically to qualify occur simultaneously instead of the way she did it. If it did, since a basis in that which it is based upon, she has upon it would be coexistent. I would say they're of equal temporal duration. To reread that sentence, if it did, since a basis and that which is based upon it are of equal temporal duration, it would follow that the pot had been produced, for it must exist even as it is approaching production.
뭐야 다 대체 어제 봐이 친하니 어제 님을 믿으신 친의 군도 제와양 친의 제와 믿으러 다 분비 제와 여대 분비 제와 매나 안에 분바 님바 안에 시바 메시바 라 지바 메시바 되면은 분바 님바 지바 메시바 소 안에 차지전지 님보 여기서 잖아 미르데 금방을 기위 친한데 나를 기위 세 기위 생겨 민데서 나 기위 생겨 많이세 대세 사바 임베셔 임바 많이 받아 사바 임베셔 나를 제와 나를 제와 원이지 임바 메주신 나를 제와데 원이지 임바 메주지 치구도 제와양 나를 제와다 원지 임바 무지 치구도 제와양 임바 많이데 대세양 사바 임베셔 어제 봐이 친하지 어제 임바 메주신 친의 군도 제와양 친의 제와 메주로 세더라 친의 사도 제와 원이지 임바 메주로 원이지 임바 메주로 대한 제왕 원이지 주와 까비 권에서 제왕 원이지 주와 까비 권나 임바 원이지 주와 과바 인지 제와 라시지 주와 까비 권나 임바 라시지 주와 과바 인지 아니 임바 잠시 라누라 캐 메는 말 캐 그래
Next comes examining this, a rejection of this by examining the proof which is used for intrinsic rising or production of things. This is in 358. And the opponent here would say the pot's production exists, for without it there would be no oldness and so forth. But there is oldness which is characterized by the cessation of things. The cessation of things, yeah. The answer, that is incorrect. Verse 358, that which was previously produced was not old when first produced. Also that which afterwards has been constantly produced is not old. The previously produced pot was not old when it was first produced because at that time it was new. A previously produced thing does not grow old by way of its own intrinsic nature. Nor is that old which afterwards has constantly been produced, for also at that time it is new. Since afterwards it is newly produced, it will not become old by means of its own intrinsic nature. Furthermore, by refuting things existing by means of their own intrinsic nature, refuting production, intrinsically being intrinsically existent, then intrinsic oldness is refuted as well. But the mere oldness is accepted in our system as well, that things can be old.
Oh yeah. 단 뒤숨라 따라 가바니 이러와 다다와 영어원이 대일해줘 테마임 대일해줘 마이시 마음来讲 유명라 대화 来讲 유마이세 다 뒤숨 대화다 마음보다 다다위 뒤숨도 라시지 껴와 매배장 아니 껴와 라시지 껴와이나 아니 뒤숨도 라시지 껴와 요고 그래서 뒤숨도 라시지 껴와 매배장 껴와 대마 매대 그래 뒤면에 배세 유단 저분이 뒤면에 봐 임당 아니 다다용 오원이 다다와 대일의 중앙 많이 신기세 고니 다다와다 다다용 오 다다와다 진영 인장 다다용 오원이 다다와 대일의 중앙 많이 신 다다바용 오원이 다다의 중 많이 신기세 몽발의 중앙 많이 라세 다다용 오 다몽발의 중앙 많이 라 대화의 중앙 많이 놓세 라시지 껴와 뒤숨자도 매배 아니 뒤숨가 라시지 매바인자 껴와 대 아니 가서 라시지 껴와 많이 봐 아니 껴와 좀 봐 라시지 매장 라시도 껴와 나와기 아니 껴와 좀 봤다고 껴와 좀 봤다고开朗와 차오
Next comes examination of a rejection of some kind of intrinsic production by examining the 3 times. This is in 359. since it is not, there is no intrinsic production in any of the three times, real production does not exist. 359, a present thing does not come into existence from itself, nor come into existence from the future, and also not from the past. Since cause and effect are not, and she has simultaneous, I think I would translate that as contemporaneous. Cause is not contemporaneous with effect and vice versa. A present thing does not come into existence from its present self, nor does it come into existence from the future, nor from the past. Moreover, since there is no intrinsic production in any of the three times, one must accept that false production is like a magician's illusion. So false production here means, or unreal production, like a magical illusion, exists. Production not existing as it appears, but to ordinary persons, but the way it actually is like a magical illusion.
That's any. You were 20 the joke of it, Dambatella. Givalani on water, Tishin Gala draw me, Givala on water, Tishin Gala draw me. Teta in a cheetah was super demand and drama is. And a doy goes to Galonta. Miki Giovanni Kana on Maila. Gabana can't draw Maino, Shesumbe, Rashiji give it, Rashiji give it, Tawashavatar, Rawame was Jibu Kashi Tokona Sanation, Kasheta Ongola, Gabatar, Tawa Nubatar, Rame Batokona, Tedana Tabachue. Tabachue, and he Jawada Gaba Mingatawa Santo Saba, Sabe, and a Jaga Jumata to Kela, Tajinashi Jaga Jumata Bokel, and Gure said, Jawalani, Omata, Tishingala Dumebe. Tedayina Chita, Busuba Juman drama in. Yeah.
So next comes summation by showing the result. So next comes a summation or a demonstration of the result of rejecting, negating production or the arising of things in a summary, and this is given in verse 360. The format that the text that Ruth followed was different from the format here, so we'll follow our format. It says, first comes the verse 360, there is no coming of the produced, likewise no going of that which has ceased. Since it is thus, why should existence not be like a magician's illusions or like a magical illusion? And then this in Ruth's text, in our text, the sutra quotation follows, and the sutra says, O monks, it is as follows. When the eye is produced, it does not come from anywhere, and when it ceases, it does not go anywhere. Thus, if there were intrinsic production, a thing should come from somewhere when it is produced, like the rising moon, and go somewhere when it ceases, like the setting moon. In that case, it would be permanent, but since production and cessation are mere nominal designations, designations by means of names, one must accept that they are like magical illusions.
Oh yeah, that is in the Kala Chow Che. Oh, Jebalani, Kashana Watang. Ani Rawanga Yomasina. Tishidu Gabalayang, Kashidung or Tin draw me about Teta Yina. Around but Meva Teta Yina. Chida Wuchidana, Siba Jumatan draw my indi. Siba Jumatan draw my indi. Then Deva Chuani, Chida Towana, Jumatan Chava to the Sonchi, then Towana. Ane Denudana, Ane Dama Matubara, then the Rewachuana, Chitawa, Towana, Jumachawa, Juchi, Moshaji, but the Juana, Maino. 갑디 대화를 깨워 좀 강나 깨워 좀 가 말을 라신지 주의 깨워 가봐서 강나 모샴지 부이 샤자다 충배 근데 아니 근데 깨워 잡거나 근데라 구원되버 충배 깨워랑 리로 캐메 레 미니바 여바 미시 충배 민비셀로 좀 레와니 오미다와 지바체바 테리 호와냐바 테이지 먼저 주체베 치메 타와치 도와쳐 송아야
So then, since things do not come from anywhere when they are produced, nor do they go anywhere when they cease, here you have to qualify that by saying that the things, if they were autonomous things, don't come from anywhere, because there's no such thing as an autonomous thing. They don't come from anywhere when they're produced, nor do they go anywhere when they cease. If, autonomous things don't exist, so they can't come from anywhere or go anywhere. Why should external and internal existence not be like a magician's illusions or the magical illusions? When dependent origination is seen as it is like an illusion that's been created, and not like a barren woman's child. Meaning, a barren woman's child is an example used to illustrate a non-existent thing, a thing that is just impossible to exist. And then it says here, at this point, the commentary, Chandrakirti's commentary, says that if mere production is negated, it is the kind of object of comprehension that a barren woman's child is, and thus a denial, or literally a deprecation of dependent origination. Meaning, if you take it that way, then you're negating or rejecting dependent origination. And then I'm going to translate this next couple lines differently from the way that Ruth does. Believing in a mere system of talk, saying we are not even unable to accept production in our own system. This destroys the Madhyamika view. Since adherence to such an interpretation creates causes for bad rebirths, it should be discarded like a gob of spittle.
Oh yeah. 나디니 걔네 주소 라시지 또와 가바들 라시지 주와 가바텔라 나양 천이 서서 마버지 천이 소라지 주와 가바 투메도 짠서 그래봐 오니 외메지 타와 가바 담보텔라 아니 천이 소라시 주바 직단 단다 림다 직자라 따라 가바텔라 계단에단 집어나 주자 중화 외메시 림지 중화야 외메나 아니 남시 중화 여바 교르세니까나 다 뒤제지 천이 지직내서 못해 라 뒤제기 천이 겨와다 내와다 집어남 아니 원이지 중화 여바 말에 원이지 직자지 중화야 여바 마이 림지 중화야 원이지 여바 미나 다오나 가디 중국에 뒤 남시지 원이지 중화 여바 교르세나 뒤 남시 중화 여바 여바 교르세나 아니 제주는 저 라시지 매와 인상 름다 직자기 매와디 라시지 름다 직자기 아니 직자의 동음 아니 라시지 름다 직자도 매외시 라시지 름다 직자도 매와 인상 단다 가서라 뒤남지 자 라시지 매고와
So next comes a general refutation of this idea of intrinsic arising or intrinsic production of things through a rejection of the production, the duration, the disintegration of things. All three of these being established by means of their own intrinsic nature. Rejection of that, and that has four subdivisions. First comes refutation of this by examining the three characteristics of created or produced things. That is, they arise, they have some duration, and then they disintegrate. Those three characteristics are the defining characteristics of created things or things that are produced, and so showing that they're neither that these three characteristics the arising, duration, and disintegration can't be established intrinsically either sequentially or simultaneously. So examining that, one then rejects production of things. And so that's the first topic here. That's given in verse 361. Production, duration, and disintegration do not occur simultaneously. If they are not consecutive either, when can they ever occur? Since production, duration, and disintegration, the defining characteristics or characteristics of products or created things, do not occur intrinsically simultaneously, nor intrinsically consecutively. When do they occur intrinsically? By means of their own intrinsic character. The subjects, and then the syllogism is given, a proof statement. The subjects, production, duration, and disintegration do not exist intrinsically because of not being intrinsically simultaneous or consecutive. Since if they were to occur, if they were to exist intrinsically, they would necessarily have to exist either intrinsically simultaneous or intrinsically consecutive, and neither of these is possible. Therefore, they cannot exist intrinsically.
Yeah. 他曾经出门就太晚搞办，你叫我来说话，叫来说话，他们家了，那他们家中华的，那叫我做人，那他们家中华的，他那就包括你接着些，那我就当着我那是，有些就曾经叫我当就把他说话，他们家了，那叫我给，啊你。 과사면로서 그래서는 과사 담제 중화대 중국어 티시레스 저와라 고고는 지발라양 아니 저와단 자와 지바 여바 주신 내와라양 아니 가서 지바단 자와 나신스 내와 퇴상 내와라 아니 내와 퇴상开两个 아니 투메도 주신스 대단한 자위参이 아니 마주베 자위 천이 마주베 라시 주어 두자야 매도 자위 천이 깨와다 집어라서 나 깨와디 고사디 나 깨와디 마숑와티 송마도 마주메 자위 천이 마주베 아니 라시 주어 두자 매도
So next comes showing that rejecting this idea of intrinsic production or arising of things by showing that if it was to exist, it would entail that these characteristics would be endless. There would be no limit or end to the characteristics of arising, duration, and disintegration. So that's 362. If for production and all the others, all of these occurred again, disintegration would seem like production, and duration like disintegration. Since production, duration, and disintegration would all require the production of production, and so forth, disintegration, like production, would have another disintegration, and duration too would seem like disintegration in that one would have to assert that it has another duration. Thus there would be an infinite regress. In that case, the basic characteristics, meaning basic characteristics here mean arising or production, duration, and disintegration. None of them would be established. Therefore, there is not even an atom of intrinsic existence.
Oh yeah. 他经常太太大了，干巴太了。拆了拆西先呐，拆西没大你看来，让那西干样要把人。 你我啥话要嘛人这个了，拆了拆西先那是，俺你去让个拆你当，俺你拆西，我拆你当拆西得当，俺你让心去几个，俺他得说大把呢，他得，俺你要看说的，拆你得当让心去准备接近年数来，俺你拆西对家碰不到不让心去接近年数了，参西对家碰不到我的，参西对家碰不到我的，让心去参与对家个参与接近呢什么呢？参西不把对家到我的，让心去参与了先拿，参了参西先拿，参西对家碰不到我没大把你看来一点，太大了， 让心宇宙为这个他的嘛，让心宇宙为嫌疑呢？俺那前些对家恐怕到我的没大把你看来的马英把他，没大把马英把他，让心宇宙为嫌疑没些，让心宇宙为嫌疑哪了？俺那个就把没得吧。俺那大把英国也是，看来也明白他，让心宇太太不些，让心宇太太不些。这没推荐那些的啊，然后让心宇宙为他没得参与那，他没得把经营那，那让心宇宙为他没得把么经营那，参与什么的，参与什么个？我也比我稍微把么把让给参与的参与给我也把给，俺那我所用，我也把跟我所的，稍微的也把么把他。他们家，我你就准备按他们台那经营我的是，俺那是让个说我没过来一张，我也把跟我稍微明白他，参与明白他，参与的参与明白的参与的经营不些人，这些都参与的。参与的经营不些人，这些都参与的经营不些，参与民主化，是吧？这些都参与的经营不些，参与民主化，让现在这段在看到也看了我没下我。
Next comes a rejection of this by examining whether they're identical or different. This looking at here looking at particularly at the characteristics arising or production, duration, and disintegration. Are they identical or different in nature from the thing which they're characterized, the phenomenon which they're characterizing? So here the opponent might say, are the characteristics in that which they, or the question arises, are the characteristics in that which they characterize one or different in nature? That's the question, and someone might assert that which is characterized, namely a product or created thing, such as a pot, is different in nature from its three characteristics: production, duration, and disintegration. The reply to that is in the verse 363, where it says, if that which is characterized is said to be different from its characteristics, how can the characterized be impermanent? Alternatively, the existence of all four is unclear. Unclear here actually what it means there is that they couldn't be differentiated. There would be no way to differentiate them. How can that which is characterized, namely a product such as a pot, be impermanent? It follows that it is not, for impermanence and the pot are intrinsically different. Alternatively, if they are intrinsically not different, the four, that means the three characteristics and that which they characterize, the three characteristics being again production, duration, and disintegration, that which they characterize, for example, a pot, do not clearly have the character of existing as functional things. I would modify that translation and say one wouldn't be able to differentiate them such that they could exist as functional things. They wouldn't have that character. It follows that the characteristics are not characteristics because of being one with that which they characterize. If they're identical, then there's no way to differentiate the characteristics from that which is characterized. And that which they characterized is not what is characterized because of being one with the characteristics. So the distinction between characteristics and a thing which is characterized, like for example, again, the arising, the duration, and disintegration of a created thing like a pot, one wouldn't be able to differentiate the characteristics from the thing which is so characterized. And one wouldn't be able to do that. One should therefore not assert that they are intrinsically identical, a single thing, or intrinsically different in character.
Oh yeah, that's it. 大家希望得了，希望我女婿也没打了嘎巴啦，这就等住月呗，就说等住月吧嘎巴汤，就说我也没看到人台湾嘛，主要但把你给，他不接就等住月呗，就说等住月吧嘎巴汤啦， ngobo khala mije de ngobo ngome la mije ngome mije de ngome la mije wo so de da da wo ma nam ji je so ran xin ji ye de ani je so ran xin ji bu zhu jie la je ji ji che ba ran xin ji ye chi je wa che ba ge yu de je wo ji be ge che ba de ran xin ji ye che这呢，如果我不出生的呢，如果我出生的呢，按那三分钟我的储备退来，按那那样没去吧，是吧？我把我的没去的，是这意思的，是吧？如果我出生的呢，三分钟我出生被退来，那样没去的是，三分的按你就往马上吧。사배 만주와 뭐 사배 안에 만주와 주와 매봐 누구 매지 치다 사배 만주와 사배 공원의 말로밤 만주와 아니 누구 매지 치다 누구 제시야 라죠 매리 비치르세 누구 제시야 라죠 매리 비치르 제선바데 앉아 줘야 매리 비치르 누구 사변용 매발라 미제시 오보메레 미제 누구 사변용 매발라 미제디 오보 매발라 저부집이니와 매베셀 오메 미제 어디에 오메라 미제 오보 매발라 저부집이니와 매베셀 양제봉 오메 중오메라야 미제데스我们没觉得，这不我们没帮，我不没帮打把打了吧？这不我们的，就我们了没觉得，李军山的了，你300如果700没去不去，300跟如果700没去不去了，300如果700没去不去了。这不我们就我们那样没去过，谁干了？这不我们没把的就我们那样没去不去了，谁干了？我来没去过，我来见到空头些朋友啊，俺不掏都不会去这些人让些一叫我没事呗，俺呢没事把人家让些一只我叫我比较特别不去是啊。
So next comes a rejection of this idea of production by examining whether or not things exist intrinsically, are intrinsically existent or intrinsically non-existent, and that has multiple subdivisions. The first of these is that rejecting this idea by showing that if the cause, which is the thing which gives rise to something, was real, if it was real, then the production and so forth, the other aspects of the production of the thing would be real as well, and that's rejected. Showing the first part of the rejection of this or refutation of this is in verse 364. So the opponent here asserts production and so forth exist intrinsically, are intrinsically existent because the agent of production is intrinsically existent. And the answer, reply to that, a thing is not produced from a thing, nor is a thing produced from a non-thing. A non-thing is not produced from a non-thing, nor is a non-thing produced from a thing. So the sprout, an already existing functional thing, is not produced again while the seed as a functional thing exists, because a sprout is not produced unless the seed undergoes change. Also, a sprout that has already been produced cannot be produced again. That would be pointless. The production of it would just occur endlessly. The sprout as a functional thing is not produced from a non-functional seed because a non-functional thing does not have the ability to produce an effect. Furthermore, a non-functional effect is not produced from a non-functional cause. An example here is a burnt seed does not produce a burnt sprout. A non-functional effect is not produced from a functional cause, since the fallacies already explained would occur as well. since intrinsic production is impossible, causes and conditions that might supposedly give rise to it are pointless or meaningless.
No, yeah. That is because then you are just我看到人，他妈妈做把你，就完了说我看到我看到人，他妈妈做把你，我不是民主的，我不是民主咯，我民主的，我民主咯，我开始我不民主咯，民主咯。对了，还是说的，咱现在咱结巴咱基本我们让心来多空，我们就让心来多是咱我可能个让心，这就可能个让心有些是吧？让心是哪？中我我们个基本我们让心来多空，我们个让心来多，一个单那样没人的，这是没我的，来就问我们就的是啊。我让现在在那，这是没我的，那样就我民主的，那叫我太没不起了。我让我不民主的事情，那叫我太没不起。我们那样叫我样，我不民主了，谁干了？我不是民主，我们那样叫我样，我不民主了，马上就不让叫我太不起了。我们那样叫我不经常马上叫我太了。但那我当我们一个来叫我让信息买到是啊，买到是。大家看说的，西方我们那样基本我们觉得是，基本西方我们西方的，西方的路的来西方我是吧？那西方的我们来了，对吧？按照打不出个是吧？西方我们那样基本我们觉得也不明白了，马上就扑到基本明白起来，扑到基本明白起，这个看是我不是民主的，我不民主了是，这是就我不没办法民主了，这是我把这判断改变起了。
Next comes a demonstration that the arising of things as either existence or non-existence, things which are positively existing or negatively existing, cannot be established in any real sense in any way whatsoever. And that's given in verse 365. So she does this as sort of an introductory part of the commentary and then the actual verse. So, moreover, should one consider that production and disintegration pertain to that which has the nature of a functional thing or a non-functional thing? Here, functional thing would refer to something which is produced by causes and conditions. A non-functional thing is something that exists but is not produced by causes and conditions. So here the verse plays on the distinction between thing, which is short for functional thing, and non-thing, which is short for non-functional thing. So the verse itself says, a thing does not become a thing, nor does a non-thing become a thing. A non-thing does not become a non-thing, nor does a thing become a non-thing. Something already produced does not again become a thing being produced, since it is senseless or pointless for it to be produced again. A non-functional thing is not produced again as a thing, otherwise it follows that even a barren woman's child could be born. Thus there is no intrinsic production of either functional or non-functional things. A totally disintegrated non-functional thing, here she's giving totally disintegrated for a term which means something which has disintegrated in the past. A non-functional thing does not again become a disintegrating non-functional thing. Here, in this system, it's in the Madhyamika system, it's held that a disintegrated thing is actually a functional thing. But this is rejecting the notion of a totally disintegrated non-functional thing does not again become a disintegrating non-functional thing. For something non-existent, like a barren woman's child, does not disintegrate. A functional thing that is already produced does not become a non-functional thing, since the two are contradictory, mutually exclusive.
Oh, yeah, pension gavi chero che. Nan do yu ji du de la. Do la du je du ma che. Do la du je du ma che gu na ba yi. Cha son de da nan do ming a de. Do wa gu la du ma che to jin. Da do dao de ju wa na ba en si. O de da du je ran du ma che yi che tam je a ran xi ji zhu na ba yan ba. Che gu ji ran xin le chi me le ba ma shu ba. Number is they in that digit the certain good Russian let Leba Mashubara and it Chime Seba Saba Yova in town and a Transon Teta Nando Minga days. Nando Minga days, Rashi Chua, Rashi Nando Minga Dim. Draw Gula Duma Chatochin. Doa Gunyang, Gulayang, Semi Rashin, La Tremel Leba Mushawa in Zang, Aneka Sore, Rashi Seba Dumacha Tabajua Res. You know, not to tower number, not to tower to number is. Semi Rashin, La Tremel Leba Mashubata, Ane Rashi to number in Zang, Tar, Tomasebe Sabatoe. Number 8, yeah.
So this next is given a citation from a sutra to illustrate this, and here it says that I'll just translate this sort of freely in my own way. That created and the created and the uncreated are entirely isolated. The sage has said that these don't possess thought. There's no thought within them. The entirety of the universe or the world has attained the uncreated, and it is isolated from the view of the self. So the first line saying that that everything which is created and uncreated is isolated. What that refers to, perhaps, is that the intrinsic existence has not adulterated it in any way whatsoever. It's the adulteration or adulteration of intrinsic existence has not entered into these things. And then the sage says that these don't possess any intrinsic, any kind of thought or conceptuality. And then the third line says this entire world has attained the uncreated, has obtained the uncreated, meaning that one might be able to read this as saying, here the world could be short for all sentient beings, and their minds, the natural purity of their minds is such that the uncreated aspect of their minds is the fact that the stains of the intrinsic existence has not entered into the fabric, has not adulterated the stream of their minds, and thus, in that sense, they're isolated, completely isolated from the view of the self, in this natural sense that the stains of intrinsic existence have not entered into the fabric of the minds or the stream of the minds of sentient beings.
Oh yeah, that is la. 这心吧，让心主啊，是吧？结巴的嘛，结巴的这心吧，是真的。点么了？这一个了，这心吧，让心主啊，搞把太了呀。昨天这些你预备哪呢？那昨天把太了，这心吧呢，切记起人这个我，啊，哦。 切记起人，这些把你见面去了，让那他们这些把你的把他来去了，我这个的，结果带我的嘛，结果忙我才呢，结果他嘛，结果看样没这样，这些把结果我先呐， 是吧？这是把教我是，他连忙我到我的，他到我应该都把那些钱呢，叫我他妈这把看样没这样，这是把教我先呐。如果这些把呢，我你去叫没就如果这些把的，我你去叫没就他，这些把呢。看得起来效果的是那，等到地位那个了效果的，切马这边切了下过的是，切马这边下看过的是，这些把你切的，是我的，这些把你切下过了是，这位切呢，你这位空是多的是，马这位切呢，马这位马我们空是多是吧？空是多呗，再来马多把个。恰恰我你出啊没有钱了，这了马多个恰恰我你出啊没有钱了是，没有钱了是。那记得叫我的马叫我他了，俺那这些把多拿是，记得叫我的马叫我他了，这些把多拿，等我的马我把你家这些把出来是，然后呢这些把出来是。这是么主哎，推什么就叫我主哎，然后推什么就我他就这些把你把他主了，然后是吧？另外的我把这些把主哎，然后推什么就我他就这些把你把他话主的是，我叫我当马叫我他的这些把没吃的是，然后他们就这些把你跳叫我他话主是，我听不到。
Then next comes rejection of this, the idea that that which is currently being produced, which is arising, arises by means of its intrinsic nature, and that's rejected. There's a brief explanation of this, and then a more extensive explanation that follows. First comes the just brief statement of this, and that's in verse 366. The opponent might say, neither that which has been produced nor that which is unproduced is being produced. And so the first would be that which has been produced, meaning that which is past, nor that which is unproduced in this context, meaning the future, is being produced. And that which is in the process of production is being produced, meaning the present is that which is being produced. The reply to that is, a thing in the process of production, since half produced, is not being produced. Alternatively, it follows that everything is in the process of being produced. It follows that a sprout in the process of production is not being produced by way of its own intrinsic character, because that which is in the process of production must be posited as half produced and half unproduced. The produced part belongs to what has already been produced, and the unproduced part to what is unproduced. There is nothing in the process of production with parts other than these existent by means of their own intrinsic character. If the unproduced if the produced and the unproduced are both considered to be that which is presently being produced, both past and future are also in the process of being produced. Alternatively, it follows that all three times are presently being produced, since all produced and unproduced things are in the process of production, according to your position.
Oh yeah, 他就得给钱的，是吧？多点把的钱，那给完钱把得了，洗一遍呢，即兴不突然打了嘎巴，两毛我怕那也打了嘎巴，至于二斤我为即兴把了对吧嘎巴，马就把即兴把对吧嘎巴钱当，是不是洗洗多是吧？但他们即兴不突然打了嘎巴太了，即兴把一打你都瞧把即兴把没就。即兴把也单独的没下玩样，即兴没下玩样，即兴把没就是，没下即兴把没就是。那对了，可能说的是啊，即兴把让些去出吧嘛，我你去出呢，俺的提当你就把洗个是啊，即兴把当你都出吧就出把洗个，原来即兴把这当你就忙就把洗个了，大把你钱呢。 이 나반이 전에 나니도 주바시다 테마죠 따바니 이 어디 이가 그 말에 이가 미래대 제신바 민주와 타 제신바 나니도 차와대 다른 거 나니도 맞추고 쳤어 랑가 나니도 맞추고 쳐 오니지 좀나 아니 근데 그냥 제신바 나니도 차와대 태 나니도 맞추고 치 제신바 나니도 미자와 태양 제신바 민주와 타 차와 제신바 민주 제신바 예 나니도 차와 제신바 민주스 제신바 나니도 미자와들 제신바 민주와다 태면바 가비체
So next comes a more extensive explanation of the previous, the point made in the previous verse. It's got 4 subdivisions there showing rejection of this by examining what it means for something to be being produced or arising. What does that mean? Examining that. And then next comes a rejection of the position that holds someone who might say that in between the past and the future, there's a state of a thing in which it is arising, it being produced. That's rejected. And then next comes rejection of the position which holds that that prior to something having been produced, it is in the process of arising or being produced. And then finally the rejection of the idea that, or the position that something which has not arisen already is being produced. And then that's so. First of these is first of all rejecting this notion through the examination of the meaning of what it means for something to be produced, being produced, and that's given in verse 367. Here it says that. If that which is presently being produced exists by way of its own character, or own intrinsic nature, is it considered to have its own nature or not? Both are unacceptable. It follows that there could not be the process of production. The verse says, that which has the nature of presently being produced is not in the process of production, nor is that in the process of production, which lacks the nature of presently being produced. Then the commentary explains, it follows that anything which has the nature of presently being produced does not have the nature of being in the process of production. It follows that whatever does not have the nature of presently being produced is also not in the process of production, because that which is not presently being produced is contrary to that which is.
Oh yeah. 대마원지 아니 파나야 제신바데 미나바 너바가 제신바 너바가바텔라 파나네 제신바 너바가바텔라 강긴여워 파메바 세바여바 마인바 대라 제신보 메데 강지 대라 파유칠 다대라 제신바 대와 여데 대마원지 파나네 칠 파나네 칠 제신발라 때네 뒤이워데 샤히소스나 제신발라 때나 말에 제바당 아니 마음바 마제바 뒤이워데 아니 샤히소샤나 오와 강길루라 대마원 이워데 대마원 이워데 발매바 밤에봐 시바여봐 민바에 대마원이고 이거 봐도 아니 다다와 매봐 아니 가서를 시바여봐 민바야 민바를 네발 발요 그래서 단 발에서 대와 다다와 이제 발유비 루티라 제심방 원이지 주와 매대에서 대라양 원이지 제심바대 다다와 여장 다다와 원이지 주와 매대 굉장히 관계 치나 제심바 대라양 바로 현유대 진짜 관계잖아 제심바 대라양 파현유대 대라양 파현유바서 통매 타베지로세 다 뭐든지 주나 타다와 텔라야 타다와 투메다 타위 견여와 인자 현을 라마라 텔라 강그전에 제신바 텔라 파현 여대 텔라야 파현 타다와 여바 소 투메도
Then next comes this again rejection of the idea that of the position. Some might assert that there is things currently being produced is a thing which exists between the past and the future. So that current production or current arising of things is a thing which exists between the past and the future. And that's rejected in verse 368. And so here the opponent might say, that which is in the process of production exists since it is located between the past and the future. These two times may be posited in relation to to what is presently being produced. And the answer is given, verse 368, for anyone to whom the two are impossible without an intermediate, there is nothing in the process of production, for it too would have an intermediate. In any opponent's system in which there is definitely an intermediate stage without which the past and future cannot exist, that which is presently being produced could not exist intrinsically by means of its own intrinsic character, since there would be an infinite regress, and that anything in the process of production would require another intermediate stage, and that one yet another, and so on. So this is saying, like, if you take the present as an example, if you say it exists by means of its own intrinsic nature, there would be the infinite forms of an intermediate, a beginning of the present, an end of the present, and the middle of the present would have to exist in some kind of limitless fashion, and that would result in an incoherent model of the past, present, and future.
Oh yeah, that did it. I said that. Given our young or Jishimba Deva Gabani, Kangishina Jishimba, Gaba Java Jijuva, Tishina Jishimba, Shan Yubin or Nangs, that Kondo, Kade Chekibani, Jishima Mino. Down a Jishimba Canadians and one a Chishina, Kangishina Jishimba, Sabian Double Gabes. You could double give a children, you are giving negative turn kind, but raw or giving negative turn kind, but a kissing by Shecha or Sikarana, kissing by 7 double Gabe, you could double give a children, you are giving negative turn and a kissing by cigarettes. Kangichina kissing by Gabe, give a Kichua, said he said. 강그시나 대시 제신바 체계 치마제발에 현유병오 나오시나 체계 치마제발에 현유병오 나오시나 나오시나 제신반들에 어디 제소시 대뇌나 제신발에 기용오라 제신바 오니지 좋아마 오니지 좋아 돈이나 가서래 제신바 가대 제신바 되라 어디 제소 시대는 제신바라 기위 오라 제신바 온지 주바 돈나라 시지 주바 돈이나 강게세 이 강게세 강제 제바 대니 제신바라 세바메 강제 제바 제신나 아니 제제제제 제와 주루 강그체 오제와 티세 제신발에 제와 온지 세바 말레세 오디 제와 티세 오디 제신발라 아니 온지 세바 말레 제신발라 온지 세바 말데 가슴 비치름 제신발 제소보바 테란 아니 제신바데 아니 달라데나 보베르와 제소 보비 테레 추위 기용오야 마주보서我也没出包，这的结巴的结心吧，一诺些那，呀，俺这不觉得啊。
So next comes the rejection of this position that holds that that something being produced exists as a thing prior to its having arisen, the thing having arisen, and so that's given in verse 369 and 370 also. So the question is given: if the half produced is not in the process of production, what is? And then the assertion is given. Since the process of production is the arising of the produced through cessation, that which is presently being produced appears to be a different entity, a different thing. So since the process of production is, for example, the sprouts being produced through the cessation of the seed, something in a state where its production has begun is said to be in the process of production. Thus, what is presently being produced appears to be a different entity or different thing from that which is half produced and half unproduced. The answer is given here. If one could point to anything and say, this thing has been produced from this thing, which is in the process of production, one could identify something in the process of production existing by means of its own intrinsic nature in relation to the thing produced from it. And then the first half of verse 370 gives elaboration on that. When a thing is produced, there cannot be anything in the process of production. However, when a thing has been produced, there cannot be anything in the process of production which exists by means of its own intrinsic character. For what is in the process of production has ceased. A produced thing which has arisen from such a process of production and which permit its inference does not exist. So here this is bringing in the issue of inference, that the evidence for the thing would not be present.
哎呀，他得想想嘛，他写的那么重是吧？而且他就讲话的三种的，把这三音不是他是查到的。
So maybe tomorrow, maybe we'll stop there because there's not much actually left in this chapter. There's only a couple more verses, and then
that's it.
Oh.
아니, 내 가사를 이거를 좀 또그 봐봐 이제 줄이 거래.
I'm not sure. Is there a Is there a translation of the Tarkajwala? Maybe some parts of it or something. Cha karu yore. Kasa cha. Liu chikni yopra. Chitang gyur mendu. Mendu.
Oh yeah. 按你们意思，在你猜对了，按多个把我给多个把我的来那个我们就不知道的，是吧？按你多个把有过听嘛，按你看说的，他留了解，你什么时候去做嘛的去，是吧？像我们这什么在底下呢？东北门子是吧？那。 可是政府不先给多个把我去，写出来要不都写的干嘛送？俺当中还是得写了，刚刚得看说的，吃这了，说的了，你说他，俺推荐别个过来，这你们你什么推荐别个？俺那多个把写。 在这下午上面，那这陪我的话，陪着干了，是吧？这上面都在。
溜可以
啊，我的嘛，
哦，好了说。So Gemroche is saying that we'll probably finish this text maybe tomorrow. The 400 is not that much left in it actually, and so His Holiness has suggested in previously, and I'm not sure I, the translator, don't know where or when, but that it would be useful to teach some of the Tarkajwala, which is the blaze of reasoning, which is Master Bhaviveka's commentary on his own composition, which is, which one is that? Panyapadipa, I think, maybe. I'm not sure the root text, which he wrote that commentary on. So I'll in the time that we have left over, maybe we'll teach, start from the beginning of that and do a little bit of that. And maybe it'll dispel your boredom.
Sajipugi Jai